All right, so let me get all the recording stuff happening before I forget all that. But I only got about 2.5 hours in.
Okay.
And you may not remember all the details that far back, but I made it past the drive-in, not the drive-through, drive-in. And I'm at some place where I met my first, automated gun type thing. And there's
so a turret?
Yeah, turret.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like so low on ammo. I'm at the spot where there's a gang, what do they call them, raiders or?
It could be raiders, scavers. Yeah. There's all sorts of different things in this game. So
I think I'm going to make us go live on Facebook.
So you're just past Starlight, the Starlight Drive-In?
Yes.
Is that where you're at?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I walked into that place and had 2 trip bombs or 2 bombs in there for me.
Oh yeah.
So I died. And my suit is so damaged that, and I come up to little stations where you can do,
power armor. Yep.
Well, yeah, where you can build stuff, workshops.
Okay.
But I can't get out of I don't know how to get out of the gear, but it won't let me do it while I'm in the power armor.
That's right. Right. So to get out of your power armor, it's the E key if you're playing with the keyboard and mouse.
Okay. Wait.
Is that what you're doing? You're playing with the keyboard and mouse?
I am, but isn't the E like reload or something? No, R is reload.
No, you just hold E down. You hold it. Yeah.
Because E is pick stuff up.
Yeah, so Fallout 4 is probably the best all-around experience to get you ready for Fallout 76, simply because it's Fallout 76 is kind of like an online version of Fallout 4. So you're going to get mostly, figure things out. Now, just as in a comparison, if I've talked about Fallout 4 before for myself and how much of a fan I am of the whole, the way things look. And I just love the old timey videos and all this kind of stuff that you run upon in this game. My current play time on Fallout 4 is 731 hours.
Now, have you finished it and come back and played it again, or is that you still?
I'm on my 3rd playthrough.
Okay.
So, and what's interesting is that it's different each time. Each time you play through, it's completely different. So, you'll play through once, and you'll be one faction, and you'll maybe go with the Brotherhood of Steel, or maybe you'll go with the Railroad, or you'll go with, the Institute, and all this different stuff. And then there's all the DLC too, because there's you end up with you've got all the DLC from the Fallout universe as well. So Far Harbor, which is Bar Harbor in Maine, and you've got Nuka World, and it's just huge. And then you come and find out Fallout 76, and I have a beta code if you want to. Well, I think the betas are over unless they announce some more before the 14th. But yeah, Fallout 76 you realize is 4 times larger than Fallout 4.
Holy moly!
Ridiculously huge. So.
Yeah, I'll wait for us to go live on Facebook, but let me get rid of pre-show. There it goes away. All right, we'll be starting here in just a minute.
Okay.
What was I gonna ask you? I don't know. I know what I did. So I accidentally, whenever you're doing the initial setup of the character, and everybody's just now coming in. We're talking about a video game, but we'll get to the show here. We'll get to the show here in just a second.
We'll get to the show.
We'll get to the show in a second. At your initial setup of the characters, somehow I accidentally chose the wife of the two, and so that's
fine.
My character is the wife, so she's a pretty, I don't want to curse, but she's pretty bad. I'm going around kicking some butt.
Oh yeah,
I'm going around kicking some butt as her.
Yeah. They didn't hinder the female characters at all, which I think is great. In Fallout, in the entire canon, they've always made the ability to play. Not the first. I think the first games you can't. You have to play the guy as a protagonist in the first couple. The sole survivor, as he's called, but your son was kind of right in a way. You really should start out with Fallout 1 and 2, which are board game style games, so you can understand the canon and what everything's about. But it's okay to jump in and play. My playthrough was basically I played Fallout 3, then I went and I didn't like it all that much. I didn't really even understand how the game was supposed to be played. And then Fallout 4, a friend of mine got me into it, and I really loved it, put all the time into that. And then I went back and played Fallout New Vegas and Fallout 3 in Fallout Shelter and all the other stuff that's been out. Now I'm such a diehard fan. We were going through a store today, and I found a red mini fridge that I'm going to turn into a Nuka-Cola mini fridge for my office when we get it built down in the basement. So
yeah, it's funny that some of the things you've said in the past didn't mean that much to me. You talk about Nuka-Cola and some of the other stuff, and it's just like words. But now that I'm playing and I'm coming across those things, it's like, oh, yeah, I remember him talking about that. Yep.
The Nuka-Cola bottle right there. I actually 3D modeled it. And,
that is awesome.
And it's a glow-in-the-dark model, actually.
Oh,
so
good.
If I don't know if it'll do it or not. Watch. Let's put it up to the light like that, and then boop. Hey, it kind of glows a little bit.
Yeah.
So turn that back on. We're on the air. Jeez. Anyways, talking about video games.
All right. Well, maybe we'll save some of that for the post show.
I just got done playing 7 hours of the beta with a bunch of my friends on live. So we still could have played till 9. So I give up an hour and a half of my Fallout time today so that I can come hang out with you guys.
Well, thank you. And if I have some time after tonight, I'm going to play a little bit too before I go to bed.
Cool. Yeah.
All right. Jan's here so we can get started. And Jan, yes, I'm recording. You ready, AD?
Yeah, let her rip.
All right, it's jpeg2RAW photo review, show number 39. And tonight we're going to wrap up August. We got behind, but now we're cranking them out, AD. This will finish August, and next show we'll start on September.
Woo.
All right, so how do you enter? And I should have had that ready. How do you enter the contest each month? This month, November, we're doing the same thing we did last month. For the last few months, it's open. You can do whatever you want, but we're encouraging seasonal images. Seasonal for wherever you live in the world, so it may be different than where I live in the world. But we had a number of seasonal images entered in October. Probably December, though, is going to be different. December is the best of the year, so this next month will be a little different. But to enter, go over to jpeg2RAW.com/contest, and there you'll see the link for our beginners group and our regulars group, and also links down below this where you can do it in Facebook. If you're still a member of Facebook, and I hear there's a few, if you're still a member of Facebook, you can go right there to those links and enter them, and the contest there is posted at the top of the group as the announcement. If you don't do that, you can enter through these two green links right here. And I know at least one image we're going to see tonight was entered through the website. Still, most people do it through the Facebook group, but some people, more and more are starting to do it through here, AD.
Cool.
Maybe because they're not on Facebook anymore.
I don't know. I'm leading the pack. I'm about to leave another social network too.
Uh-oh. So, I think I know which one. We can talk about that in the post show too.
Yeah.
I need to talk to Tim about that one and see what he's going to do because I know he was big into that too. Anyway, let's get started tonight. Just as always, we'll start with the beginners group, and first up in the beginners group is this image from Kristen Lee Anderson. And maybe I should have put it later on because I think she generally makes the show, but a little bit later. But you can watch it later. I'm recording it for you, Kristen. So Kristen says, attended and photographed this lovely couple's 50th wedding anniversary celebration this past month. They are friends of my parents, and I thought his face in this photo said it all about their 50 years together. I also thought the black and white was timeless and classic edit for this type of photo.
All right.
Yep.
Cool.
And some of this is the image we're getting off of Facebook is going to be reduced. I might have liked to see a little bit tighter crop where I can see his face better, and I'd love to be able to see her face too. So that was my two main critiques: is being able to see both her face and a little bit tighter crop. Yeah,
and so for me, I try to look at when I look at an image like this, and someone asks me like, "What do you think?" and they're like asking me like, how could I make the image any better? I love the processing of the image. I like the black and white. I think is very classic, and it really lends well to an older couple.
Hmm.
Just all put that all together looks really nice. So I look at the background, and it's got this wonderful fountain in the background, very classic, and it looks like they're in this beautiful garden. And we have the subjects right in front of the fountain, and her face is obscured. I would think that just a second
Yeah.
after this, she would be spinning around because his arm is going over her head right now. She's turning, I believe, or just turned around. And this is what we always want to talk about, the decisive moment. And so for this couple, it's probably fine. They know who they are, and they're probably going to love this photo. And that's really all that counts. But if we wanted to capture the photo that just floors them for the rest of their lives, their favorite photo ever, maybe capturing her face in there, and maybe getting in a position where that fountain was not the backdrop, but its own kind of thing on the off to the side. It just seems like there's a lot of like little things poking in and out of the image that that are kind of distracting to me. And I agree with you. I would have liked to seen her face a little bit, and the joy on her face. We just barely see her chin there, and
I think what you do with a shot like this, because you never, they're moving. You don't know what's going to happen. We talked about this last
exactly.
show. Maybe you motor drive it and you get
Yep.
a burst off
Yep.
to get good focus, but also, maybe you get several different variations of that.
Yeah, and a lot of times people are like, if you've put in the amount of time that, say, some of the classic photographers have put in back in the film days, and we're able to get a shot with one click, then, you would have got it.
Mm-hmm.
But in this day and age, a high-speed shutter, and we often talk about camera features and this and that, and that's one of them, is being able to rattle off 4 or 5 shots in a row and have them all be in focus. Those are camera features that we look for in good quality cameras today, because of situations like this. We have the ability to take 5 or 6 frames in a row. Let's do it and capture that perfect moment, which let's face it, the cameras of today have not made us the photographers of yesterday.
No, they make it possible.
We're different.
They make it possible for people like me to take some good photos.
Well, and myself too. I mean, I'm not a great people shooter. So, landscapes are, I'm sorry, I'm going to offend every landscape photographer out there, but landscape photos are easy. That generally mountains don't run around, so that they're impossible to take a photo of. People are very difficult, and we're going to see some other people in tonight's, selection of photos that we have, and it's hard. So anytime you can capture, and if she's focusing on his face here, and the other person in the photo does not matter, and that's what you're saying when you cut out the other person's face. I think we're not seeing the joy on her face either. So I think it's important to capture both people. And when we talk about that decisive moment or that perfect moment, that was what I would look for here. The secondary thing is the placement of the fountain. And if you're doing wedding photos for these folks, you get your butt over to those people and tell them what to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of the whole deal when you're doing photos for somebody else. They want the best photos. And you could easily just say, hey, could you dance a little bit more to the left? Could you do those same moves for me to the left? They're going to dance and enjoy themselves. And you can stand back and get that photo of both of them and both the joy on their face and the setting as well.
Yeah, you're like the director. You're the director.
It's exactly right. You're like directing a small movie, and it's hard for a lot of people to but you got to think about that stuff before you take the job. It's easy to be like, oh, you take good photos. Would you shoot my wedding? And then you're like, yeah, I'll shoot your wedding. Let's lay down some ground rules because I want it to be great for you guys, and I'm going to need some help from you to make that happen. And so I've done a couple weddings. I've done a few. And every single time you make plans and they're destroyed. I mean, and you got to learn to think on your feet. It's about, like, I made a plan, like, with this one wedding where I was like, okay, we're going to shoot right after the wedding. We're going to go do the photos while everybody's moving and getting things going. And of course, half of the people, didn't show up. It's like, what were you doing? Well, I had to do this and I had to do this. I like, no, you had to be here to take photos. So now we're behind and people are waiting at the wedding. It's just one of those things where, and that's why I stopped doing weddings, because it was very difficult to get people.
Weddings, I could never do a wedding. Wedding is just too stressful and too difficult.
It is.
And we're only seeing one of Christine's
absolutely
photos. But did I even put her name up? I think I did.
Yes.
Okay. She takes great photos. We're just seeing the one here that she submitted.
Absolutely. Yep.
One thing that Jan said in chat, and I agree with her here, is that one, and on our right, that one bush that you can see a little bit of.
Yep.
You can just barely see it. You might as well get rid of it.
Yeah. Just cropping it down a little bit. I think you're right as far as, anytime we include background, we need to think about the background in the composition. So if you include too much of the background, something else we'll talk about tonight, then sometimes you got to crop some of that out of there, and that would have brought us closer to his face. I mean, we're absolutely you want to have him in 1/3 and her in the other third too in the composition. So a tighter crop here would have done that for you, and none of the other stuff that's on the outskirts there is really doing anything for the photo. So a tighter crop here would have worked. So.
Well, thank you, Kristen, for entering,
yeah,
as you always do. Up next is our last one of the beginners group. And this one, I don't remember you submitting before, so if you have, I'm sorry. But this is from photographer Chris Bennett. And what does he say? He says, elk. Let me see if I can get where I can read it.
I had some text, but it's gone.
Yeah. Image taken while out driving the back roads of near Winston, Montana. I think that's what it is. I stopped my truck, jumped on. I stopped my
Minnesota.
truck. Minnesota. Yeah, Minnesota. What did I say?
Yep.
Yeah.
Montana.
I said Montana. It's Minnesota. Never mind. We'll go back to that later. I stopped my truck, jumped on my truck, snapped a couple of frames. It was an overcast and gloomy day. Thought the elk was on a farm. It's not often to see them up close to the road. When I stopped to see him look over my way, after snapping a couple of frames, he got up and walked away. Just thought it was cool to see the new antlers emerging and the felt peeling off.
Yeah, so it's actually the other way around. If Chris is watching this, this is actually the felt falls off and the antlers come off every year with elk, and they grow brand new antlers at once a year. So this is actually probably right after rut, and they were fighting, and the velvet and skin and everything gets kind of dry, and then it starts to peel away, and then the antlers come off, and then they grow brand new ones all over again. So with the felt and everything on them every year. So I thought it was an interesting photo. You don't see this too often. He was probably out clowning around with the ladies and had a long night, and he was just taking a nap in a field. I'm going to ask you a question, and maybe you know this, Mike, but to me it looks like he may have been using
Hold on,
cheap.
Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's up?
Well, I didn't delete the previous recording, so we don't have enough space.
Uh-oh. Better make some space for the recording. We'll take a short pause for technical reasons.
That's a beginner mistake. What am I doing? Beginner, but I've done it twice. All right, we're back.
All right, cool. All right, we got it. Edit. Cut. So how much of that did you get then?
I'm not sure. Start from whenever you started critiquing it.
Yeah, so I just this is actually, it was just reaching out to Chris if he's out there. This is actually when this is late in the season after the elks have been in rut, and what happens with the male elks is that their blood supply to the antlers gets cut off, and the antlers actually the felt and everything peels away, and then the antlers come off, and they actually grow brand new antlers every year. So this wasn't actually as they grow, because they actually grow with the felt on them. So this is the other side of that. So he was thinking it was new antlers, but it's actually old antlers.
Okay.
So yeah, it just looked like that. He had been out here resting after a night of partying, I think, too hard. My question is, Mike, is this: does it look to you like either the image seems to be like a little noisy or fuzzy, but it still seems like it's in focus to me. But I don't know. Like, I'm looking at like the way the bokeh looks like maybe a kit lens or something, maybe.
That, or you think maybe it could be a crop? He cropped it in a little bit too tight.
Well, and that could be too. I don't know. Anyways, it's a good question. And since Chris is submitting in the beginner, I think your composition here is good, Chris. I like it. It's a good classic image of this elk just hanging out there, and you're very lucky to be able to grab an image like this. I might have put a little bit of a very light vignette around it, just to draw us more towards the, give it a little mood, maybe. Other than that, though, I think you did a really good job. But I'd have to question if you're getting images like this, or you lucky to get a shot like this. I'd make sure you got a more powerful, higher quality lens. It's time to invest where you could get a much cleaner, sharper image. Because to me, when I saw this, I had the feeling it was shot through a window. That's the kind of look that it gets sometimes, where the bokeh is kind of a little weird in the background. So I'm not sure what he shot it with. I'm not sure what his question here. I think it's a good image.
Yeah.
I think it was equipment end of it as far as that goes. If you're going to edit your images, if he was going to do any editing, I'd probably edit out that little stick that's in the right above the elk's head on the left corner there. That kind of dark edge there is kind of a distraction. But other than that, it's a good image. I think the color's good and all of that. Maybe you add a little contrast. Those are all things to taste. I mean, you got to find out what you really dig to do, and I mean, that's what I've done over the years. Is I started out one way, ended up another way, and then, like we're going to talk about tonight, Mike, with your image, we're going to do some processing, and I'm just going to show you what I would do.
Okay. And I'm looking at what I'm looking down for. I'm not playing up my phone as you talk. I'm looking for this photographer. There's always top of my Instagram feed, and now I cannot find her. But you're talking about a different lens for wildlife and stuff, as we'll see in another image later on. Wildlife, if you really want to get into it, the longest lens you can get, the better, and you can spend life savings on some of these lenses. They're just insane.
Yeah.
But I wanted to. She's a Nikon. What do they call those people that? Ambassador, Nikon ambassador, and she takes I think she's up in Canada. She takes some of the most amazing wildlife photos that you've ever seen. Now, I'm sure she's worked at this for a long time to get to that good. And I'm going to have to post it later, because now all of a sudden I cannot find her at all. Sure. Michelle or something like that, but God dang it. Anyway, you can use some of her photos as inspiration. I'll post it in the beginners group. And I look at them and I'm sure she's shooting with a 500 f4 or a 400 2.8 or a 600 f4, something like that. Something big. But she's also hiking back into some of these places. So yeah, I don't know. And whether she's using a tripod or not, I imagine with some of those she is. Anyway, I was wondering, AD, if you hadn't cropped it down already. Let's assume this is the full frame.
Right.
Would you do something a little bit tighter crop? Because for me, the story here is his face and the antlers. Him and the antlers. And I maybe come in a little bit tighter. Maybe even instead of a landscape, do a portrait on him.
Yeah, you could. I just don't know how close you can get. If I had to guess, out of just pull a wild guess, I'd say that this was a Canon Rebel camera and a kit lens, because that's what it looks like to me. I'm just not seeing that crispness that I see with, a prosumer camera. And so I'm just wondering if, Chris is loves to take, if he's found what he loves to do. I'm always like, when you first start shooting, just get a camera that feels good in your hand. Most of them have fairly decent features. They're not going to be horrible in the lens department, but you're going to get a kit lens, and it's going to show weaknesses, such as in situations like this, and especially when you crop in, you're going to see the weaknesses. And so, if he's discovered that he likes to shoot photos and he loves wildlife, and this is like one of his favorite photos, my suggestion would be time to gear it up and get something at least in like you said, the 70 to 200 f2 is a good starter lens. And yeah, Gary makes a good suggestion that the D50-100 is a good lens with a 55 to 200. But I don't, those are kit lenses. I mean, I think he needs to, if he's really into it, I would suggest for Chris to bump it up to the next level. That would be my suggestion, because I think he's obviously he knows what to look for, and he was able to spot this, and maybe he lives in a good part of the country where you can see this stuff all the time. Hey man, that's just, it can turn into your day job real quick. So
yeah, in her name, I found her, Michelle Valberg.
Okay, I've not heard of her, but
she's somebody that look. Chris, I'm not saying that you need to reach her level. She's an elite level. But I look at her images and get ideas and get inspiration from them, because you're just fantastic. So
absolutely.
That's a good, if you're into wildlife photography, find some other wildlife photographers and look at what they're doing, and they make it look easy. It's not easy.
Right. Yeah, for sure. A lot of hours spent.
It is not easy. Yes. All right, so that's it for the beginners. Up next is our first one from the regulars group, and that is our friend Ebenezer. Ebenezer.
Hey, from halfway around the world.
From halfway around the world.
Yes.
Where's his name? There we go. Ebenezer. And one thing, Ebenezer, you never give us a lot of information.
I know, and this is a great example. So we're gonna exploit that a little bit, just so other folks who submit too. The whole thing when we do all of these photos, it's all about helping other people be inspired or giving them ideas for creativity. Mike made that suggestion for that other photographer, just simply because it's not like, here's what you can compare your work to. We're not saying that at all. But we always like to have something that we can aspire to. So by seeing amazing photos, I know for me, when I first started, I was all over 500px and Flickr, and I was just looking like, man, I want to be able to shoot that, and I want to shoot that, and and so that's the whole idea, is that to give you that spark. So I'll try to do that with this photo.
And don't get discouraged when you go out and shoot something. One, they're probably shooting with the top of the line gear, and so, you hear a lot of times it's not the gear. To some degree it is. I mean, if you're shooting with a 7200 and they're shooting with a 600 f4, that's going to make a big difference. So
there's mechanical difference for sure.
Yeah, there's some mechanical difference, but also this person is more than likely, like Michelle, I don't know her background specifically, but I don't think she just started last year. I mean, she's probably been working at this for a good while and works hard at it. And again, she's showing us her best work. I'm sure she has a lot of duds too. Right.
So Ebenezer, we always ask you guys, please tell us why you took the photo, what your idea was in processing the photo, this sort of stuff, and kind of like what you're looking to get out of the critique. So Ebenezer's information with this photo was very expressive. That was it. So we need a little bit more than that to go on. I agree with you, Ebenezer. And my first instinct is to be like, you nailed it. Let's move on to the next one, Mike.
Yep.
I hate to do that to anybody, but you're not leaving me any room to talk about it. I'd like to talk about your selection for post-processing. I think it's very interesting. I like it's almost like a split tone. Was there something you were going for with that kind of mood, that sort of thing, so that we can help other people as well? Generally, when we get to the regulars group, we're really not doing much of a critique, as we are trying to just show people what works in the image and what they're doing. So when you subject an image to the regulars group and you're selected, that's usually what we do. I think he nailed this photo. I think it's great. Good street photography, well processed after the fact. I like the the color and that he chose to do this in. And yeah, it's very, very expressive. It's the man definitely has some thoughts going on there, and you can really pick up on that. I don't, for me, and then we've said this before with people submitting images. Give us a big image, man, and we don't need all the extra borders and all this kind of stuff around it. We're going to talk about you, and if you want, you can even say, "Can you mention our website or something?" I don't care. We'll mention it. I mean,
Sure.
there's no skin off our back, so we can help you out. But in the show, nobody's gonna. You don't have to watermark your image. It's better for me to see the images without watermarks on them. This has got 2 watermarks, 3 watermarks. I don't know. There's like 3 watermarks on this image, and so for me, it's that's a little much.
Yeah.
It's okay if you're going to post it on the web or something, but if you're submitting it to a show like this, you really would like to just see your image if possible. So it's a good image, Ebenezer. Keep it up, man. I like the tones and the colors, and the composition's good. It's moody.
I like the sharpness he got on the face.
Absolutely.
You can see all that stubble on his face.
Yep.
The one tweak he might have been able to make is the white shirt, the T-shirt is a little blown out. Not a lot, but there's a few hot spots. You could have toned that down just a tad.
Yeah, it is. This is a really wide range image, and I often wonder when I see images like this that are more muted, but then they have these super bright. Were we just looking at the histogram and trying to pull things out to the edges? Because sometimes that's not necessary. Sometimes it's not necessary to have pure white in your photo or pure black either. I've seen a lot of cool images that have neither, that have a really nice look to them. So, Gary, I don't know what kind of lens he was using here. We have no information. So you guys are submitting in the regular group. Try to give us some info so we can pass it along to everybody else. That always helps, for sure. But I like it. It's a good image. I can't really critique too much because I don't really know what he was going for. So.
Yep. All right, up next, and I think she's out there in Facebook, AD. Is
Facebook?
Yeah, no, you don't have Facebook, but I think Christina Binge is out there in Facebook, so hopefully she's still listening. And this is her image, and she says, she gave us a good bit of detail. See, I'm ready for fall. I found this golden flower in the woods. The background is of a thick tree trunk in the distance. I thought the dark background with the golden sun, which was really just other flowers in the distance, beaming down gave off a nice fall vibe, even though everything here is still very much green and alive. She did add some texture to the background to give it a little more grungy mood, but I wasn't sure if I could clone out the flowers at the bottom or leave them. I left them, but they're kind of a distraction for me. And then she says, not trying to make this post wordy, but I discovered I am not a summer shooter. I'm not a big summer shooter either. I don't know what it is about something about summer. Had me put my camera up on the shelf and leave it there all through June and July. Okay.
Yeah, and so it's interesting. So summer...
I don't know if it's just the heat. The heat is what I don't like. Although as I lose weight, it's not as bad.
Well, summer really, I'll tell you what I like to shoot in summer, and it's thunderstorms. So I like to shoot weather related things in summer. In early morning, you usually get some nice fog in the mornings with some beautiful sun tones in the summer that you don't get any other time of the year. But during the day, and I don't know, Mike, I know where you live, it's summer more than it is here, but up here in Alaska, where I live, upstate New York, where I live, generally summer is 3 months if you're lucky, and then the rest of the year is winter pretty much here. So, like I have other things to do during the summer rather than go out and shoot photos. A lot of times I'm kayaking or something, which I'm also shooting photos sometimes. But I do a lot less of it during the summer myself. And I think it's mostly because it depends on what you're shooting. Like a lot of, and Gary mentions this too, there's too many bugs in the summer.
Yeah.
I agree with you there, but then some people are like, yeah, man, that's when I go out, I shoot the bugs. But mostly during the summer, I'm shooting evenings and mornings, and I don't shoot during the day. And that's kind of the landscaper's rule, is to go out at sunrise, uh, take a siesta for the afternoon, and then go out at sunset and then shoot, into the dark. And those are the best times to shoot landscapes. So it's very natural for me not to be doing that in the summer and being inside more. And then during the winter, in fall, you can pretty much go most of the time and get something really cool. I mean, there's always specific situations like after a heavy rain, I'll go waterfalling because that's when the rocks are wet and the leaves are wet and the water's higher. So you get better waterfall shots. Usually try to shoot waterfalls when it's cloudy out. I mean, there's situations for just about every type of shooting, So yeah, I totally am with her. I think the other thing is though is make sure that you're getting up early in the morning and you're trying it during the summer, because you might find that some of the most beautiful light in the summer is in the mornings, and then in the evenings we get sunsets here that are just amazing that we don't get any other time of year.
So I wonder if that's because of my friend who works for the EPA and Air Quality Division says
it is.
A lot of those beautiful sunsets and sunrises you're seeing is because of pollution.
Yeah, and so what we get here is we're near the Great Lakes. So generally what we get here is a lot of reflected sun in the west. So we get all of that air out in the west all the way to here. This year, because of the forest fires that were happening in California, the sunsets here, late sunsets, were just blazing. I'd never seen so many amazing sunsets, and since we moved here. But I think it was mostly because there was so much in the air with the fires that it was causing, these beautiful sunsets. So, yeah, while you might not be a summer shooter, you might not be looking in the right place. So give it a chance. And talk to other people who go out and say, what are you doing? Why? Because there are definitely shots to be taken. And hey, the other nice thing is, like, if you go out in the mornings and the late evenings, it's a good temperature and the bugs are usually napping off somewhere. They're usually not that bad. So yeah, but this is a gorgeous picture. This was I think my favorite picture that was submitted in this group. I liked it because it was soft and nice. I think I would have, Christina, you can try this if you want. It's totally up to you. But I think I would lighten this up a little bit, and maybe those flowers wouldn't, maybe it wouldn't bug you so much. The flowers at the bottom.
Lighten up the main subject or the whole image?
Lighten up the shadows a little bit, I think. Just to make it softer and little less contrast in it. It's soft now, but I'm saying just even maybe a little bit softer. And those, I think you'll see that the other flowers that are down there, these flowers usually come in fairly good bunches. So we had a bunch of these around our old house, and they were just, after a while, they get out of hand, and they're just like massive amounts of them. They're not black-eyed Susans. Danielle will be able to tell you in 5 minutes what they are, but they're a really cool flower. They're beautiful. So yeah, I didn't get the thing though. I will tell you, and I think by lightening it up, you'll accentuate the golden sun, because I didn't get that. I got the golden tones, but I didn't get a fall vibe from it. I got a summer morning vibe because it's a flower, and I start to think of death and in the fall, fallen leaves, and I don't think of color in greens during that time of the year. So I didn't, as the photographer, she was there, she got that, because I'm sure she was surrounded by some, leaves on the ground, and obviously the time of year. But when I look at her photo, I don't know, unless it's a clear fall image, what time of year this was taken. I have no idea. So for me, when I first looked at it, I thought it was more of a summer image. So yeah, I think lightening it up a little bit and softening it might give it even more of a fall image. I'm not sure. So,
okay.
But it's a beautiful photo. I love the flower,
feel.
and yeah, the feel of it's very cool. So she definitely nailed that for sure. So,
all right. Thank you, Christina, as always. All right. Up next is this image from it seems like he's submitted before, but I think it's been a while. Marion, I don't know how to pronounce the middle name. Cooley?
I have no idea, folks. You gotta phonetically spell these names because I'm from America, so I know how to say Jones and Brown and Bob. And that's about it. So
And I can do those names too. It's just some of the others I can't.
right.
He says, nice guy, 8 frames, 8-frame shot, and that's about it.
Yeah, so it's got some good information though. Since we don't do too many critiques on regular images, I mean, unless they ask for it. This is a beautiful Milky Way shot. It's lightly processed. I've seen. I think the processing could have been taken. The post processing could have been taken a little bit farther than it was, but it's a decent image. The thing I want to talk about with everybody here is that Marion did the right thing here and explained that this is a composite image. This is not the image as it was like out of one frame of the camera. There were many frames shot to make this image. And anytime you shoot the Milky Way, you have to do multiple frames to get the image to come out proper if you're including a foreground. And the reason why that is because generally when you're shooting the Milky Way or any stars, you want to shoot an exposure of under 20 seconds, no more. If you shoot 20 seconds or longer exposure, and I've had people go, well, can't you shoot like 30 seconds just to get the right exposure? And you can, but what happens in 30 seconds is those stars, actually not the stars, but we move on our planet, which the stars look like they move in the sky. They're in a different position in 30 seconds. So you end up with a blurrier image that way. It makes the star look like a little, like a manta ray in the sky. It just won't come out right. So shooting under 20 seconds is just long enough to get the light in and this was shot at f2, which is great, at ISO 3200, and for the Galaxy. And you can shoot down to f4, f1.4, but it's difficult to get focus at f1.4. I usually shoot at f2 or f2.8. And most of the time, I can get most of the Milky Way on a good night at about ISO 1600. So it's quite bright at ISO 3200. And I would challenge to see the image full size to see if the noise in those stars was too much. And so that would be the suggestion that I would make there. So the sky here was shot at a 15-second exposure, right on. That's perfect. And the foreground, which looks like it was shot in the Badlands. The foreground was actually shot at ISO 800, f-stop of 3.2 for 135 seconds to get that light. So that's excellent. That's great information for anybody out there who wants to learn to do this. And then in Photoshop or your favorite photo editing program, those layers are all then put back together. So he shot 1 frame and then 7 frames for the Galaxy. So I think what they did with the Galaxies is he probably pulled in 7 frames, probably aligned them so that they're all in line with each other. And then all the meteor shots that he has coming in there, those were all separate meteors that all fell. And that's a pretty classic thing to do, is to put all those layers together, auto align them in Photoshop, and then use the lighten for each layer, and it basically will only show you the lightest parts of each layer, and that'll make those all the stars and stuff in the right places pop out. And he's got like, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It looks like there's 6, maybe 7 different meteor shots there. So that's great.
That's amazing.
So 7 frames, 7 meteors, and then 1 frame for the foreground. And that's how you properly shoot a Milky Way photo. You do not shoot them in one shot. It's not possible because your foreground at f2.8 will be either out of focus, or your stars at f2.8 will be out of focus. One of them is not going to make it in an f2.8 or more wide open aperture. So
let me ask you a question. So you shoot, and this is not HDR then, right?
No, he's not doing HDR. Right. He's probably what he's probably doing is using either he's using like a blend diff or something like that, or he's actually, most of the time I just use, I think I changed my layer opacity or layer type to lighten. So each layer above that just shows only the light spots, and the dark doesn't affect the overall exposure.
So what is the purpose of shooting more than one frame then? If all of
To
them have
get
the same
all of the
exposure?
meteors.
To just get more meteors.
To get more meteors. So if
Okay.
you're shooting a meteor shower,
Yeah.
generally you'll set up your camera in one spot on a tripod. You won't move it, and just riddle off frames as you start to see meteors. Or in like a case like this, probably what he did is shot the foreground shot first, got rid of that, waited for the Milky Way to get to the right spot, and then put it on auto shoot and just shot 15 seconds over and over and over and over again till he got home and found all the meteors, and then just blended those together with using I think it's auto align in Photoshop. So you would line up all the Milky Way parts, and the meteors will just show up when you set every layer to lighten.
All right, very good. It's good to know. All right, up next is this kitty from our friend Millen. Kitty cat, and the small neighbor's kitty is what he calls it. This is from Millen. Millen says, this tiny little fella was hiding in my neighbor's, but not good enough. So I've managed to take some photos of him or her. So my one comment here is it looks a little underexposed to me.
Maybe. I'm not seeing like if he was again going by the histogram. There's the the little white spots in the eyes look like they're pretty close to full.
Right.
So bringing up the shadows, I don't dislike the way that is myself. I think it's a decent shot. Personally, for me though, I want to see him move back a little bit because I want to see those little paws in there.
You got the one. I think you got one.
Yeah, and I just think that he could have moved it back and give a little space around the frames, a little tight around it. And the only reason I offer up any critiquing to Millen, because I know that's why he submits, is to learn. And it looks like there's an interesting area where this cat was hiding. I would like to see a little bit more of the wood and stuff there, this wood pile or whatever is in there. So it's a cute photo. And I would just like to see the little paws, kind of.
I do like what Millen did here, and this is a mistake that Millen's not a beginner, but something that beginners sometimes do is they shoot from above. Millen got down to the cat's level. You're almost at eye level with this shot.
Yep.
And that to me, if we had another shot where he was standing up or wasn't at that level, you'd see the difference. How Millen getting down to this level made such a big difference.
Yeah. And the other thing is, too, Millen, just always remember when you're shooting your subject, be wary of what is behind the subject. The stick that's behind the cat there on the right is sticking right out. And I think if you would have moved a little bit more to the left, you could have hidden that behind the cat, and it wouldn't have been a distraction there. It looked like been stabbed in the butt with something like a clothespin or something. But that's always a tough thing with portraits and everything. I've even been out with pro photographers, and go through their exposures when we get home and you look behind them and there's a pole sticking out of someone's head. It's hard, man, because you're really focused on the subject, and you're not really thinking, about that, at least not all the time. You are about, usually for me, I'm like 5 frames in and I'm going, oh man, why didn't I look? I got the 5 frames I want, and now there was a pole, sticking out of someone somewhere. So, just always be wary of that sort of thing when you're shooting subjects like this, so there isn't that distraction. Because it's also quite bright too, if you notice that back there as well. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know about the underexposure thing, Mike. I can't really tell that just by looking at it here over the internet. So, I would send it over to you on that one. So if you say it looks underexposed, it probably is. So.
Yeah, but like you said, the whites in the eyes, you got to watch that. If you did anything to exposure, you'd have to watch that doesn't blow out and become, because there's something, I don't know what that is. There's a white line going through it. There's something behind or in front of the cat that's causing that reflection in the eye, and you have to be careful if you did bump up the exposure not to make that worse. I
think he was shooting like under an awning or a porch or something. He was down there. So, But yeah, it's a cool shot, man. Very cool.
Yep. Thanks, Millen. All right. Up next is this shot from Nancy Smith. That's
Hey,
a name I can pronounce.
there you go. Good job, Mike. Good
Yeah,
job.
I think I didn't mess it up. So Nancy says, after a meal, I like to sit and talk with my grandson. The light coming in through the window behind me this day was perfect, and I couldn't resist taking some shots of him. I had several, but the eye to the camera connection on this one was perfect. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely looking right at the camera.
Yeah. I think the only thing I do here is just put it in a standard crop. I just think it's a little off center with one eye targeted in the middle, which is very strange for me. So I think I'd make it more of a headshot, Nancy, and just bring in that left side and even it out, because it's you nailed the moment. But it's like a portrait, right? So just make it a portrait. I would just make sure that you took it out of this. I don't know if it's an 8x10. It doesn't even look like 8x10. It looks like it's just off from a 1x1. So that's the only criticism I would have here. I love the black and white. Skin looks great. Looks like the tones are all good in it. So that would be the only thing I'd say. That's another great image from Nancy. So.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Nancy.
Yes.
Cute grandson, too, by the way. All right. Up next is this image from Jose Matatunia. Go ahead. Correct me. Every time I mess up Jose's name.
Matutina. There you go.
I should record this and replay it later on.
Yeah. Yeah, we got it.
All right. Jose says, as long as there are flowers nearby during the hot summer days, I need to not have to go far, especially with all the wildfires in Southern California, just like you were talking about.
Yeah.
And that's really, it tells us what camera he took it with.
Yeah. So, Jose, please tell me why you took this photo and what your idea with your composition and your post-processing is. I love stories from everybody. I love to read them. But as far as like the critiquing goes, it doesn't help me at all. I can tell you it's a nice close-up of a bee. I don't know where to take it from there.
I like the colors of the image too. The blues, the yellows, the greens.
It's good color. I can. The only thing I can say, this is all I can say, is just going to be like technical things that I personally would watch out for. What that means to you is what you take away from it, because I don't have a goal to help you try to reach. So for me, I would not, like, if I was to edit this image, I think I'd probably get in a little bit tighter. The bee's wings are enough out of focus that they're not really doing much. Mainly, I would get in tighter simply because, and this is another one I would crop to a portrait, is because of that lower corner in the left is, in the contrast between the blue and the bright green is too high. So it ends up being a distraction. And I would probably also take the green on the right down a little bit with an adjustment brush. And this is just, again, this is what I would do personally.
Yeah.
That's.
Are you thinking maybe crop it to where that blue comes all the way to that left corner?
Yeah, I would crop it in, say, it's hard to just probably just a little bit to the left of that very first flower, almost where there's a little speck on the blue part of the flower. I'd probably pull that in a little bit there, pull it a little bit in on the right as well, and turn it into like a standard 4x6 crop portrait. And that would get rid of that corner down there, which has got the bright green, looks like it's underlit or something down there, but it's kind of a distraction here. The story really is the bee gathering the pollen. So we need to minimize the players in the composition so that that's really all that speaks out. You're not going to, and especially too, I tell people a lot, colors mean so much in an image. Toning means so much in an image. I mean, people are hired to grade, and that's gradient films for tones. And films have their own palettes. just because it lends to the story. We are affected by those tones. So if you're not going to like do much tone processing in an image like this, then you've got to make sure that your composition is super strong. So, and that's why I headed in that direction, because I think the composition here is targeted right on the bee's head. The bee's head's almost in the dead center of the image, which is a big no-no. Yep. We don't want to, unless that bee is sitting up looking straight at you and it's like a very symmetrical shot, then, other than that, we want to make sure that we're not targeting our images, because the closer you are to the center of your image with your subject, the closer you are to it being a snapshot. And that's what we have to be, just a snapshot. So, I mean, it's you've got these focus tools, and in your viewfinder, you got to learn those. That's very important. Move your focus spots around so that you can compose. A lot of times when I'm shooting bees and stuff, I'll move the focus spot to one of the lower corners or the upper corners, depending on, before I approach the bee. That's what I'm doing, is I'm moving that focus spot around. Once I approach the bee, I can get the composition in the camera, press my back button to focus, and boom, I've got the focus right where I want it. I'm not pointing the center of my camera and half holding the shutter button down, which is an old trick that, nowadays you can move your focus spot around. And I can tell you, he's shooting on the A7R2, you have 95% coverage of focus spots. So you can move those around to selectively focus where you want to. So that'll help you with your composition a lot. And it'll force you in a lot of cases to compose the image when you're taking it, which I think is important.
Right. I do that even when I'm shooting sports sometimes, is move it over to one side or the other.
I was shooting rodeo, man. I always did it. I mean, there would be, like, if we're shooting barrel racing, I knew what side the girls were going to come around on. So if I wanted them on the left-hand side, I would just make sure my focus was on the left-hand side of my frame. Every time they came around, bam, I nailed it right there as they're coming right around the barrel. So yeah, it's very important to learn the selective focus and where you can move those spots around and then use them for composition. So that'll help you a lot.
All right. We got 2 more images to go, and then we're going to let AD critique one of my images. In the last 2 shows, I've given him some that were a little easier. This one you're going to have to hang out for, because this one he's going to really be able to rip me apart. All right. Here's our second to last one.
When do I do that? Since when?
No. You're right. You're gonna give me really good feedback. You can give me good feedback. All right. Up next is this image from Amber. And Amber says, worked on this some more after original post in the group. I used one high-speed HSS speedlight through softbox with a grid camera right. Putting a before and after. Oh, she put a before and after in the comments, so I don't have that here for us to look at. But she did put that in the comments. So she was, and she put in the comments, I don't have it up where I can see it, but in the comments of the post, she's looking for this, I don't have it ready, but, that look of, what is it, like a Mad Max type thing or something like that, where it's that type of thing?
Grungy, gritty.
Or Burning Man or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and so she mentions that she used a high-speed synchronous flash, which means that you can actually get shutter speeds over 1/200th of a second or 1/250th and still use your flash. So a high-speed sync allows you to go 1/2000th of a second and still get that flash in there. So what's really cool is that I think she put some particulate in the air, and she used this flash for some dramatic lighting, which worked perfectly. And I will tell you, Amber, one of the things that you can actually do is use a softbox and a standard flash out of the, you can backlight, put one flash behind the subject and then a softbox for your lighting on the subject. And that flash from behind the subject without a softbox on it won't affect the lighting. It'll put kind of a silhouette around the back of the subject, which always looks very cool, but it'll make all that particulate like really light up really well, where a softbox will mute that. I think in this case, though, it worked really well for her. I like it this way. So she did an excellent job here. I often like to shoot with one speed light when I'm doing stuff like this because it gave a much more dramatic. The light is much more dramatic. There's that, you can tell it's only coming from one direction. So yeah, I think this worked out perfect. I mean, we talked about more grit and grunge, and she nailed it with this image. Looks like there's some smoke in there too, so that's cool.
Yeah, no, she did. She's going to try it. I'm looking at the comments now. She's going to actually, one of the things she was thinking is the clothes looked a little too new, so she's going to try and shoot this again later in a more fitting environment with some more deteriorated clothes.
I'll take them outside and just run them in the dirt, man. That's how they pre-wash your jeans. They just put them in a big thing with stones and concrete and then wash them 3 or 4 times. So, yeah, that's a technique all in itself. You can actually so one of the things that I learned with modeling stuff and how to make things look old and worn is you learn different techniques. Like with clothing, what's a really good technique is actually to go get some dirt. And basically dry the dirt out and then sift it so that it makes this fine dust, and you can just sprinkle this stuff on things, and it gives a real grungy, weathered look. And so you just have sifted dirt, basically. Obviously, you're going to want to make sure that you're not breathing any of that stuff in. Yeah. But it is done quite a bit in movies. They use sifted dirt on clothes to give it that grungy look. So I think this image, the flower and this were my 2 favorites this week. I think they're both excellent work, and Amber's just come so far. Yeah. I mean, incredible. Keep it up, Amber.
Keep it up, Amber. All right, the last one up before we get to mine is from Norman Schultz. And Norman says, indigo bunting, overcast day, 100 feet away. Wow. First clear shot of the day, 400 millimeters. That's the information he gives us. And okay. I wondered, Norman, if this is if you crop this down quite a bit too, because 100 feet away is pretty far.
Yeah.
With 400 millimeter lens, it's still, because the bird looks a little soft to me.
It looks very soft to me.
I'm wondering if you cropped it down some too.
Yeah. Focus is very hard to nail at 100 feet at distance,
especially if you're hand holding.
Especially if you're hand holding. And this doesn't look like, though, blur to me. This looks like it's not focused. And because I can't find a focus point.
No, I couldn't either on the branch.
Yeah, I usually look on the branches for things that are closer. But I really, unless it's the see the leaf that's right at the tail, the kind of pointed leaf that's sticking out. You can probably see it on my screen share. This leaf right down here, right next to the right foot of the bird, looks like that might be the most in focus thing. So it looks like it just front focused just a very little bit. It's very hard to tell because a lot of people, and this is what you have to do when you're shooting this kind of stuff, is don't check the back of your LCD screen, because I don't care who you are, you can't tell if something's in focus even by zooming in on it and looking at your LCD screen on the back. You have to look into the viewfinder and zoom in on it if you have an electronic viewfinder.
Yeah, I don't.
And I don't know. But
Norman does say that it is a lot of crop.
Yeah, and that's rough, man, because it's going to show if you miss that focus by just a little bit. Yeah. But I like the composition of it.
I do too. And
the bird is looking right at you.
These are beautiful birds. I don't get them here. I mean, it's rare to get one of these birds here, but it's a beautiful bird. And you're right, it's looking right at you. So I like that. And he's isolated, 400 millimeter lens. He's done a great job isolating the background. It's not, really it's just the bird and what he's sitting on. That whole thing where I was showing you before why I created an artificial environment. I don't know if he did that here. It probably is a natural environment, but the distractions that are off, outside of the subject, he's minimized all those.
Yeah. And I every time I go out and I see the birds, and right now we have a hooded merganser in our pond, which is very rare. They're a very rare diving duck. And we have one, and he's been here for like the last month, and I can't get a shot of this guy. I've got a 70 to 210, and if I get anywhere near the pond, he's gone. Yeah. And so I end up shooting from my deck, which is 100 feet away, and by the time I crop it, it's too it's just there's not enough detail for me. So,
You know, and he says that 400 millimeters, the Tamron, which you shoot with a Tamron, is a little soft. You know, some lenses are like that. When you're at the full zoom, you know, they may be a little soft. You may have to stop down a little bit, and even then, it may not do it. And you know, if you have a big lens like a 400 millimeter, and I've shot with my 120 to 300 2.8 when I shot some sports, and to other people who see that lens, they think it's a massive lens.
right.
And they're thinking, man, you must be able to shoot the eyelashes from a player at the other end of the field.
Yeah.
It's very disappointing to tell them, oh no,
Yeah, right.
this is not a telescope. This is
Yeah.
not a telescope. I'm not. It may look impressive and it may be expensive, but it's not zooming in the way you think it is.
Okay, so he says it's an 18 to 400, so it's not an APO lens for sure. It's a casual shooting or traveling lens generally. And so, go ahead.
I was going to say those, what do you call them, mega zooms, the ones that have a really wide to really zoom in. There's just trade-offs with that. You know, they're going to have some issues with their sharpness or whatever. I got the 200 to 500 Nikon, which is an f6, so that's the trade-off there. It's an f6. It is a pretty sharp lens, but it's f6. I think Tamron has a 100 to 600.
Right.
That is still not on the Nikon body. Is not quite as sharp as the 200
Right.
500. I think the 200 500 is going to beat it, but it is sharper than that 18 to 400.
Yeah, and we've talked a lot about this before too. Keep in mind too that these lenses are maximum sharpness is usually around f8 or f5.6. So you're going to give up light. So you're basically, if it's a cloudy day, you might as well forget it, because then you're going to bump your ISO, and noise is going to cause it to look soft too.
Yep.
So it's not a winning battle there. Generally, if you're going to shoot with a lens that isn't APO glass or L glass or whatever, you're going to end up with you're going to run into those problems. It's either got to be sharp and fast across the whole lens. And he's mostly to the center of the lens, especially if he's cropping here. So he's effectively kind of breaking it down, but they get very soft very quickly at more wide open apertures I've seen. So
yeah, and the trade-off, of course, here is you save money. Like when I bought the 200 to 500,
right,
it was still it's well over $1,000.
Yep.
But compared to a Nikon 500 f4, which is a beautiful lens, I mean that's going to be $9,000.
Oh, easily, yeah. And so the thing is, Norman, my suggestion is if you really dig shooting birds, then spend the money on the glass and think less about spending the money on some of the other glass or the other features, because you really can't beat a good body and good glass if you're going for this thing and it makes you happy and that's what you like to do. I know you submitted quite a few, and that's what I would do. I'd be selling off all my stuff and getting a good lens and learning that lens, pretty important, putting your time into that, because you're obviously getting the opportunities, so we would like to see you maximize the quality of that. So that's why we make that suggestion. So
he does say that like the 18-400, it's a smaller lens. It's not as big as your normal like a 400 f4 or a 2.8.
Well, yeah, that's the thing.
So it saves weight. If you're hiking with that lens, you're going to save some weight. So that is the trade-off. You're not going to get as sharp.
But Mike, I mean, you can say that, but I mean, I've carried a 60-pound backpack with me everywhere I've ever gone, and I mean, it's just that's what I do to get. I take that equipment with me to get it. I mean, if you're going to make sacrifices, you're sacrificing for your photos. So it's one of those things. To me, if you've got to carry a body and one lens with you, if you don't want to carry anything more than that, I don't know what to tell you. That's, I don't know what to say. That's all I got.
All right, Norman. So thank you for submitting. And now we're going to go to, that was the last of the August. We're doing August, right? Yeah. Last of the August images. And we're going to do now my photo. This is not from the August contest. This is just one I took. And actually, AD asked me tonight this is an HDR. AD asked me for the brackets of this. And so I've forgotten when I took this. This was taken back in 2010, September of 2010. So actually a little more than 8 years ago. And what my thinking here, AD, this is at Swanee Town Center, and I was taking this photo to enter into our annual contest called Snap Swanee. And,
Okay.
And so the thought here, what I wanted to get was a sunrise photo. I think this was sunrise. Yeah, sunrise photo of the sun coming up over Swanee Town Center, and call it, the sun rises over Swanee or something like that. And so
Cool.
I got there, I found where I wanted to shoot from, got there maybe an hour or so, whatever, before sunrise, and just waited. And I wanted to get it just peeking up over the buildings there on the left. So there, any other?
No, I think that's good.
Okay.
So you shot HDR.
I did.
Right?
Yep.
So what I wanted to talk about is essentially, I'm getting some brackets going here.
Okay.
You sent me your RAW files. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the HDR and a shoot like this in case anybody else is looking to do it. And then we'll talk about the final image, and I'm going to show that too. So I have the final image up here. So you'd let me know when you're ready to screen share.
Whenever you're ready.
I'm good, man. I'm good. We're going to start right off in Lightroom here. You shot 6 brackets, which is okay. I'm not sure what the spacing is on each of the brackets. Generally, we shoot 3, 5, 7, 9. And like if I'm shooting a super wide dynamic range, which I feel that this image is, I would have probably shot 5 brackets, and I would have spaced those out with 2 EV spacing. So it would have been 0, +2, +4 on one side, and then 0, -2, -4 exposure on the bottom side. So that would give us 5 brackets. And if that, I probably also would have shot 9 brackets at 1 EV spacing. I have specific reasons why I will shoot with all of those. It sounds like an exorbitant number of brackets to shoot, but I don't like to leave anything to the software to try to figure out. So when I have a high dynamic range, such as an image like this, which has got a lot of bright and a lot of dark in it, I will generally try to shoot a lot of brackets to cover all of that. But it looks like you captured enough of the light here to get the image that you were going for. So what I wanted to do is take you guys through. We can look at Mike's finished image. That's this image here. And so we'll talk a little bit about this image, Mike. Now, I have a low resolution version of this image, so I didn't really do a whole lot to it. First off, for me, in the image, I think you caught the right time of day. You caught the subject matter that you wanted to capture. There's way too much sky and way too much grass in this image because what it is you have 2 negative spaces, essentially.
Yep.
You've got sky with no interest in it because it's blue. Couldn't help you out there as far as they couldn't put any sky out there for you that morning. So you got the sky going on, and you got the grass, which is pretty much just grass.
Yep.
So you've got that. Those are 2 negative spaces that are fighting against each other, and it's kind of like the town is wedged between these 2 things that are just constantly going back and forth. And so the very first thing that I would have suggested to you do to this image, and we'll talk about the processing here when I go to process the HDR, and I want to show you some things, is I definitely would have cropped this into a panorama.
Okay.
And brought this down to here like this. And you'll see that the image now has a different look to it. It brings you closer to the city, closer to the sun, a little bit more warm. And when I think of the warmness of the image,
I like that.
The problem with HDR is generally the shadows will go cold on you. And they've done that here. All of your concrete here is showing up blue. Mm-hmm. And you're getting a lot of blue light along with your sun. So I probably would have bumped that up as well, bumped up the yellows in that a little bit. I'm not going to do any of that to this image, though. Because simply I often feel that when I'm doing HDR, it's very, very important to let people not see that it's HDR.
Yeah.
That's my first goal. Is what I want to do is create an image that's very natural looking, but has all of the data in it that I can extract light from. So what we're going to do tonight with your image is I'm going to go through my standard HDR 32-bit processing, and I'm going to show you how I would make a 32-bit HDR RAW file, which is something that I do with all of my HDR. I do not do standard out-of-the-box HDR anymore. It's pretty much more like exposure blending. So I have some basic routes that I use. I use Photomatics, but I don't actually use the whole program. I just use the Lightroom 32-bit plugin, which you can get on their website. Or I will use Photoshop's 32-bit mode, or I will use Infuse, which is another plugin that you can get, which just does exposure infusing, where it just looks at all the parts and puts them all together for you. My go-to is Photomatics. Basically, I need to get a project done, or I need to get photos done. That's the one that I'll use. So I'm going to show you Photomatics first, and then if you guys don't have Photomatics, I'm going to show you how to do it with Photoshop, which if you have Lightroom and Photoshop, you could be able to do this. And I'm also going to show you what not to do. So the very first thing you don't want to do is do not use this photo merge garbage that's in Lightroom, because this is nothing more than a 16-bit processed image, and you will not get good results from this. It is not a good photo merge. And 16-bit is not what we're looking for, which is compressed tones. We want all the tones that Mike took. We don't want them to be shaved off by some algorithm or AI program. That's our main goal here. So I'm going to use 32-bit processing. So what I do is I've installed this plugin from Photomatics, and it's called Merge to 32-bit. And when I click on this, it's going to load all of these into that and start processing. Before I do that, I have to make sure that all of these exposures are set up properly, though. So what I usually do is I'll click on the middle exposure so I can see kind of everything that's going on. And I'm just going to go down through the settings. And I know, Mike, you probably do this too. We're going to set up for the profile. I'm going to use a camera neutral. That's going to give me the flattest tones possible. No, it's not going to make the grass too green or the sky too blue. We don't want any of that. HDR will do that automatically. We kind of have to pull some of that back at the end. So we don't want to do it beforehand. So we'll use a profile called camera neutral. We'll also set the white balance. Now, this is a trick that I use for sunsets. I'm going to set this to shade. Now, I know that seems like counterintuitive, but why would we set it to shade? I'll show you at the end, because this is going to help what our shadows look like in the end goal of the overall photo. And if you don't like this route, you don't have to set that. You can set your white balance if you want to. Do not use auto, by the way. Auto will actually look at each exposure and set it differently for each exposure, which just totally screws up your HDR at the end. If it's daylight, set it for daylight. If it's shade, set it for shade. Cloudy, cloudy, so on and so forth. Never use auto when you're doing HDR brackets. I like to use shade because I think the sun's coming up. It's a warm photo. I want the image to be warm, so that's what I'll do. If I decide at the end I don't want it as warm, I can actually recorrect that at the end. So this is just the way I'm going to start it out. So we'll start it out with that. Then we're going to scroll down, and of course we always do the we'll do the auto remove the chromatic aberrations. If that's any lines that would appear around these buildings. I don't think you have any. You probably use a pretty good lens here, so it doesn't look like there's any lines. Cheaper lenses won't have the proper coating, so you'll see like a pink and purple fringing that'll happen around these areas where there's a lot of contrast. That's not really happening here, but I turn it on anyways just to make sure that it doesn't. And then we're going to turn on the profile corrections, and it'll show us the lens profile. Mike, is that the proper lens that you use? The Tokino? Okay.
Tokino 12-24.
There you go. All right, so after we got all that, we're done at that point. We're just going to hit sync now, and we're going to get this dialog pop up, and then I just do a check all so that everything is going to sync, and we hit synchronize. And if you notice, all of those photos now are synchronized together. So what I've done is prep them now to go into Photomatics. So now we can do the right click and the export, and we'll merge to 32-bit. And I'm going to assume that you took these on a tripod, Mike?
I did, yes.
Okay, cool. So we're going to crop the aligned result. It was taken on a tripod. We're not going to remove ghosts because there probably were none. There are some people in this image way back here, but they're really inconsequential. We're going to reduce noise for exposures, for the normal exposures and underexposed. That means if there's any noise in his long exposures, that'll be taken care of. And that's all there is to it. I'm going to just hit merge, and it's going to go through and make my computer work super hard right now and probably screw up Mike's feed horribly, and everything will look
since it's happened on your side, it's not screwing up my side feed. So
yeah,
it
might give you like 2 frames per second or something over there.
No, it's looking good. And as we're waiting for this, somebody wonders, Mike, why did you take 6? Who takes 6? I don't know. This is a long time ago. I normally, like AD said, I'm normal if I'm shooting HDR 3, 5.
Right.
I rarely would go all the way to 9. I just haven't done that. Maybe I should. I just hadn't. So I don't know why in this example I did 6.
Right. Oh, so there it's done processing. So we just did that in real time. So this file that we get back is now a 32-bit file. So this is basically back from Photomatix with 0 tone compression. No tones were compressed here. We're getting the whole thing. So if I take the exposure and I drag it all the way over here, the photo goes completely black. If I do it all the way over here, it gets pretty darn bright. Yeah. So if it doesn't go all the way to white, which it should, there we go. I don't have any room on my screen, but it goes pretty close. Mm-hmm. If it didn't go all the way that far, I would say that the brackets were probably wrong. But they look pretty good to me. So we're just going to double click and we'll start in the middle here. So the very first thing I'll do with my HDR is I'll boost the shadows. That brings up everything. Now there won't be any noise here. You'll notice there's no noise in those shadows. That's why we shoot HDR, folks. Mm-hmm. And I'm also going to bring down the top. Now I often look at sun shots. I want to make sure, if you notice in your photo, Mike, when you processed it, we have this really halo that's going on around there. Doing it in 32-bit gets rid of that problem. You notice that gradient now is nice and smooth. So I'm going to bring that down, and then what I do is I'll take my exposure and I'll center it. And I want to make sure here that I don't go into and cause any sort of blowout. And you notice how well this is behaving. I'm able to kind of put this wherever I want to, and I'm not blowing anything out. It's very nice and even. And so we didn't get any blowouts there. It's okay to have some of the shadows, but it looks like they're all pretty well above black as well. So basically, I've got a nice, well-balanced image here where we can see everything and the light is good. And now you can just kind of, to taste, you can adjust what you want here. We can adjust some contrast. We can bring that in. We can cool it down a little bit if it's too. But we got to be very careful of this concrete right here that it doesn't go blue. We definitely don't want blue shadows in there. And again, I would probably process a little warmer just because I like the idea of the warm image. I will also tell you that it is also.
Yep. I was wondering where you're going to get to that. There's another problem too.
Yep. So
this camera had a lot of dust spots on it.
Yeah. So as far as the dust spots go, I still would crop this image. Mm-hmm. I would, oops, unlock that. I still would crop this into a panorama because I think it just works better that way. And honestly, once you get it down to that point, you don't have to deal with only just a few dust spots. My way of dealing with dust spots, folks, is I will use one of two things. I like dehaze. I like to crank it all the way up.
There you go.
And that will show you everywhere that you have dust spots. The other trick that I have is that if you have dust spots that are very hard to see and you still can't see them with dehaze on, if you take and grab a hold of the screen like this and you scan back and forth, you will start to see dust spots appear in where they show up. So normally you wouldn't, like, you didn't see this one right off, but as I move it, then you can suddenly see where it's at. There's another one right here too. So you can use those to a pretty good effect. And I also use the visualize spots. And visualize spots has a nice little slider.
Wait, I didn't even know that was there.
Yeah, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you can quickly go through and just tack all these guys and get rid of them and do all that stuff. I shot recently, Mike. I shot a waterfall. When I got back, I should show you some of these images. They literally, I spent hours just removing these little, I call them zits because that's what they look like.
Yeah.
It seems to me, because they all look pretty similar, that somebody could write a program that would know how to just remove these mini circles from your image, and you wouldn't have to do this. Like we make all this other AI stuff, like maybe we could figure that out or something. But anyways, I would go through and do that. And then the other thing that you can do too is if it's still not to your liking, and you can play with this image now as much as you want, because it's 32-bit and we're processing it in 32-bit. I have the ability still to control all of the light without causing any problems at all in the image. Only when I go to an external editor will I lose my 32-bit at that point, and this will then become a 16-bit image, and we'll kind of be locked into a palette at that point. Okay. That's why I like to use Lightroom to do most of this processing with, because you don't have any artifacts. It's a very clean image, and you're not ending up with any of that stuff. I'm still seeing.
I like this crop much better.
So, my other thought was, hindsight, right? Yep. So we'll talk a little bit about hindsight in figuring out the image. And I'm not a big fan of not a big fan of using gradients. So I'm going to remove that. Oops, remove that. So one of the things that caught me with this image was I didn't know that that's what you were going for, was the whole city center. Mm-hmm. I probably would have moved over to this walk.
Okay.
And used the walk as a leading line that curved around, and got some of these lampposts in there, and you still could have gotten the sun in all of this with a wide angle lens. It's just, for me, there was just too much top and too much bottom. Yeah. So if you want to keep a standard crop, that's what you'd have to do, is kind of move over to that walkway and use the walkway as kind of the lines moving towards the building. That would be my other suggestion. And remember, you can, like I said, you still have a lot of room to play around with. Dehaze will do some cool things, kind of sharpen it up a little bit. And notice I haven't even really gone to sharpening yet. We haven't even played with any of that, and I don't really think it's even needed. But yeah, I probably would have done this in a panorama if I would have shot it at this angle.
Did you like it this warm?
Yeah, because essentially, well, let me just put it to you this way. It doesn't matter if it was a cold day outside.
Yeah.
But the colder we make this image, the less inviting it is.
Yeah, I don't like that.
We like to think of a warm sun on our body, right? Mm-hmm. So we associate tones of warmness with those tones, with the yellows. So I might not go that harsh of it. I would try to still keep this though over here from turning blue.
Yeah.
You could also do, an upside down gradient. I keep clicking that, like that. So you can also do this with the image, and we can also control that we can turn this stuff more of this color, and then the top colors we can actually split now the screen, and we can make those more blue. So if we wanted blue in there, right. And then we can control the gradient on the bottom. So you can kind of mess around with it and go whichever way you want. I've even done sunrise images where I pulled this up a little bit, and you can kind of give it, you can see the transition between the blue mm-hmm. and the orange that kind of gives you that look. But yeah, I would try to keep it as warm as possible. And obviously, when you're doing these adjustments, and I did this adjustment originally just on your original image, which you look at is very dark.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I wanted to show you guys this as well. On Mike's original image, I'll use the camera raw filter here, and just a single adjustment. Now, if you saw a dark image, the very first thing you're thinking is, well, I'll change the exposure. But watch what happens when you warm the image up just a little bit.
Yeah, it brightens it up.
It brightens the whole image without you touching the exposure at all. So, I just would try to keep the blues out of the mm-hmm. Shadows. That's the tough part is these blues down here. So, other than that, you can process the image however you feel fit. I think that's the important part of it. But yeah, I think for me, I just don't like the blues. Down
well,
here.
now that I look at your thing, the big thing for me was the crop. The crop that you did, I like much better. back in the day, I probably wasn't paying attention to making sure it was, straight in post. I probably tried to get it as good as I could, and the camera didn't think about it later on. And
Right.
now, hopefully, I will. So as soon as I sent this to you, you go, oh boy. But I'm not going to re-edit it. I'm going to send it to you the way it is.
Yeah, yeah.
and
Of course, yeah.
and I thought I got rid of all the dust spots, and when I was sending it to you, I go, oh boy, there's a bunch more. But I wanted to leave all those things in there. Yes, I like your crop much better, and I like your processing. It wasn't this bright. I would tell you that when I was there.
Sure.
The ground wasn't blue like I had it. Obviously, that
Right.
wasn't what it really looked like. So that was wrong. But it was, it was still a fairly dark morning as the light was just starting to come up over that.
Yeah, and with some tweaking too. Remember, also when you process HDR, vibrance usually gets bounced up quite a bit. So if you notice here, as I push the vibrance, the blue really appears. And you could also use the vibrance to reduce some of those blues in your shadows as well.
But man,
go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, as you push this thing around, that 32-bit processing really did good. It held up really well.
Yeah. I mean, so that's what I like about it, is it actually takes all of your sliders and everything and really gives you quite a bit of range.
Yeah.
And without noise or without any problems, showing up in the image. And that's why I process 32-bit. If I go and shoot someplace that's uber contrasty or uber dark, I need to be able to just say, so let's just give you a for instance here. If we brought this down and I said, well, I want to bring out, we got these people over here, but I want to bring out the shadows in these trees, because notice how dark that tree is. I can with a 32-bit image, I can take an adjustment brush here, and I can actually brush over just this dark spot, and I have the ability now to bring out shadows in the image that normally you couldn't get otherwise, and bring out detail where you couldn't get it otherwise without noise. And that's what why I like shooting HDR in certain situations. This is a good situation for that, because a camera's not, we saw what the camera would bring you. The camera can only see this. Whoops. Get you out of here. Yeah.
And this was a Nikon D2X for anybody who wanted to know.
So that's what the camera will get you. I mean, the sky is pretty close. And even if you go to like that's blown out pretty good right there. I mean, honestly, that's pretty much more about what you probably saw in the sky. And look at the buildings. I mean, you definitely can't, if I try to, look what's going to happen if I try to even this image out.
Look at that noise. And the D2X, anything above 800 ISO 800 was horrible with noise. It did not have a good dynamic range. And you can see that there. As you pushed it, it really fell apart.
Yeah, Norman asked if 64-bit would be any better. There's no such thing right now, Norman. There's 32-bit wide processing file size, and that is it. So that's as wide as it gets. And I think it may be better, but it might be minimal. 16-bit, the difference between 32-bit and 16-bit is the fact that 32-bit contains all of the data that's in the raw file. Most raw files are 24-bit plus 8 bits of color data. So there's like 24 bits of light data and then 8 bits of everything else that goes into the image. So with a 32-bit image, I'm preserving every exposure within this one file. So if we look at Mike's file size, his original file size, so just bear with me for just a second here, but if I go to this in Explorer, or Exploder as I like to call it sometimes, sometimes it works, and sometimes, like now, it's like, what, you're on a drive somewhere? So if I look at this file, and just bear with me, I'll get you guys a view of it too, we can see that Mike's file is about 20 megabytes, right? Look at your HDR file.
143 almost.
143 megabytes.
Yeah.
So essentially what it's doing is it's taking all 6 of your shots and it's combining them into one file with all of that color data in there. And so it's allowing me to manipulate the file. What I'm seeing is a 16 bit view because I don't have an HDR monitor. So my monitor is processing in 16-bit. I'm seeing a tone compressed version, but all of the data is still in the file. So I can still move things around. I can add adjustment brushes. I can do whatever I want. And I can't show you so much in this image, but I've done it with people in an image or subjects in an image that were in a dark area with a bright white window, and I was able to bring their light out on them fully while still maintaining that bright window, and you could see into the outside and still see all the detail outside of that window using this process. So it just gives you all the light and allows you to work with all of that light rather than restricting yourself to a very limited light range that's compressed by a program. So if I put this in, say 30 and 16-bit mode, and I told you I'd show you how to do this in Photoshop. So let's just show you Photoshop. Same procedure up until we send it out to a program. And then we're going to right click on all the photos again. And this time we'll do edit in and then come down to merge to HDR Pro in Photoshop. Now HDR Pro has a 32-bit mode built into it, and it will send the 32-bit file just like Photomatix will back to Lightroom. So just give me a second here. It's loading everything into here. So it takes a little bit because we're loading all of Mike's files, plus I'm streaming on top of all of that. So I think it's sending them all over. Maybe it's only sending one. Looks like it only sent one. Haven't used this in a while, so maybe that's... Ding. Let's try it again. No?
You got them all highlighted.
Yeah, I certainly do. Looks like it's... What?
It's 16-bit, isn't it?
Yeah, let me close all these. Closey. It says it's an HDR, but I'm pretty sure it's not. So let me just deselect, reselect. All right. We don't want export. We want edit in. Maybe they've changed this and it doesn't work anymore. HDR Pro. All right. It should send all of your photos over to Photoshop. And it's not. It's not sending any. So what we normally would do then is over in Photoshop, there's an automate feature over here. If you look down at the bottom, it's merged to HDR Pro. And we'll just browse to get Mike's photos. So just give me a second to grab his photos, which I actually know where they're at. So that's always good. And 2018, Mike's photos. Grab all of Mike's photos. Is that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 photos? We'll just drag those over. Oops. Say OK. There they are. And we'll say align the source. It's just all the same kind of dialogue. And it'll go through, and it'll either work or it won't this time. So you can see it's loading in all of the files. And essentially what this is going to do is give me the option to do a 16-bit or a 32-bit. And I'm just going to tell it not to save the 16-bit file, only to save the 32-bit file. And then that'll put that back into right back into Lightroom. So this is the dialogue for HDR Pro. And you can see right here there's a mode for 16-bit, 8-bit. Did you notice the 8-bit and the 16-bit don't look all that much different? But then when you put it on the 32-bit, you're like, well, wait a minute, what's going on?
Different,
yeah. And so this little slider right here is actually just for the preview. So this will, you can only move this around. It's only for the preview. It's like a JPEG preview. It makes a pointer to where Lightroom will show you what that looks like when it's done. We're not removing any ghosts. We're not doing any of that. We're just going to say OK here. And it's going to process those layers together. And there we go. That's the completed file. And then if I just close this and say, yeah, I would like to save it, we'll save it. I want to save it as a TIFF file. I don't know why it does that. Should be saving it as a, hopefully it saved it as a wide. I don't know. This is all new. They never did this before. Hopefully that's a 32-bit. Oh, there it is. I can save it as 32-bit. So no compression, 32-bit floating, interleaved, all that kind of stuff. Macintosh, PC, doesn't really matter. We'll hit OK. Yes. Oh, come on.
There it goes.
Just get out of there. No. Either saved it or it didn't. And so the only problem with this is when it comes back to Lightroom, it doesn't actually come back to Lightroom. So you have to do the whole synchronize folder. It'll show you there's one file left, and then it'll find it. Thank you very much. Go back to Mike's, and it'll be in there now. So there's the file. Now you notice it's where I put the pointer, but we can still do the same adjustments. Pull down the highlights, move this to the center, and you can see we have the clean image again is brought right back. If we look in close, you'll see there's no noise in the close-up. So that works the same way. It doesn't work the same way though if I do it in 16-bit. The quality is really just you can't do the amount of adjustments that you can do with 32-bit. So it's something I've been teaching for quite a while, and once people see the difference, it's like, wow, I'll never process in 16-bit HDR again.
Oh no, that's dramatic. You saw it even on another screen too when you would flip between them.
Yep.
Well, thanks, AD. That's
all right.
That is a lot of information.
Bonus material.
Definitely bonus material, especially for me. That was my image. All right, thank you. And as we roll out the show and head into a little bit of post-show, let me get this up and ready. Don't forget to go over to AD's website, theexplorographer.com. And if you haven't already, go over there and view the photos he's taken on the trip that he took up to Michigan a couple weeks ago, right?
Wait a minute. Where's my latest story?
You know what?
Where's the Trans-Allegheny story?
I think we're about to see it. I think what happens whenever I pull these pages up from before, I only spin this machine up, it keeps a cached image for whatever reason, doesn't go back out and get it. So as I hit refresh, let's see if it comes up.
Yeah, it was up for Halloween.
There it is. So see his latest thing from Michigan, but also his lunatic asylum in Weston, West Virginia. And I hear that lunatic asylum is going to be in a game coming up, AD.
Yeah. It's one of the things that was post our shoot there. We were locked in an asylum for 16 hours total by ourselves. We paid a lot of money, but we got to go in there and shoot a bunch of cool stuff. And then we found out afterwards, what we were talking about in the pre-show, one of our favorite games, Fallout, in a new version that's coming out, Fallout 76, that's coming out, features the actual asylum in the game. And Mike, I don't know if I can share this with you. Give me 1 second here. I got to find it.
Well, while you're finding it, go over to theexplorographer.com, and here's all of the ways you can get in touch with AD. Twitter, you're still on Twitter. Yep, you're still on Twitter.
Yeah.
And for Until It's Dead, Google+. But you can connect to him over there. You might also want to check out, let me know when you're ready, AD over on thecreators.com, which is over on Patreon, where if you're a patron of AD's, which I am, as you can see here, you can you have new things coming up all the time over there that you can have early access to or only access to when you do a live stream. Right now, we're looking at Janice Sullivan's macro show, which she's a patron of yours, and part of what she's doing with you, because she's not on the lower level with that, you're actually helping her produce her show.
Yeah, so that's part of what I do is teach people to go from being creators, for a hobby, and try to help them make a living out of it. So Janice is basically, that's what she does. She teaches, and I produce a podcast for her, similar to what you do for me, pretty much.
Yeah, Janice loves macro photography, and she's got a macro show coming on. She does, I believe, just about every week.
Yeah.
And part of what her deal is, what she's doing here is you're the producer behind the show.
Yeah.
Which allows her to focus on, her macro photography. But you don't have to do that. You have levels starting at $1 here. So, take a look at it, theexplorographer.com, then go over to the creators. I think you have a link on your Explorographer site.
Yep.
But go over to thecreators.com and you'll see his Patreon account where you can become a patron. And last, before we get to this image you have here, let me do one more thing. And that is, to get the show, you should be a subscriber to our YouTube channel. We want you to be a subscriber to the YouTube channel and click that little bell so you get notification. But if you want to get the recorded version through some other means besides YouTube, we're also on iTunes and Vimeo, and then, of course, YouTube. So subscribe through one of those ways. All right, AD, what do you have to show us?
Well, this is a screen capture from the wilds of West Virginia.
Whoops, hold on.
So I don't know if are you
have it
getting
ready.
it? No? Okay.
Yeah, there we go. Okay.
So this is Walter, my friend, who went on the expedition with me, and that building in the background, we found it in the game. It is the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum.
So, but this is a shot from the game, right?
This is a shot from in-game of
Yeah.
him and I standing on the mountain over top of this place, and me in my power armor, and Walter in his combat uniform. So
You guys are already playing 76?
yeah, we're on the beta test right now. They're doing a private beta test, and that's why I said I've got a code for you. I think Walter has one code left.
Okay.
If you're interested, I'll get you that code and you can load it up, man. And come
Awesome.
in. They're doing beta testing on Tuesday and Thursday this week. He just sent me a message. So they weren't going to do any more all the way up till the 14th when it's released, but now they're going to do more because they want
Yeah.
feedback from everybody. So.
But yeah, that thing you're seeing back there in the background, that building is, was in that photo. I remember one of the photos you showed us.
Yep, the building. That's the story of. That's the asylum. In this case, it's part of the Brotherhood faction, and it's been taken over by the military, which is fitting because back in the Civil War, it was also taken over back then too.
Ah, very cool.
So, yep,
All right.
fun stuff.
Well, that will do it for this week. Everybody who came out and watched live, thank you for coming out. And we'll talk in a brief post show about when we're going to come back. So until next show, keep shooting. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right, AD. That was awesome. Thanks for the feedback.
Marathon show, 1 hour, 42 minutes.
I know. We went over, but that's what I was thinking. I might even, I'll keep all that into one show, but the last part where you're giving some great feedback on 32-bit processing and HDR in general, I may spin that off as a second little piece
Sure.
too.
Bonus material.
Bonus material. Okay, so let's talk quickly about when you want to do it again. We'll be coming back we'll be starting with September images.
I'm good next week, I think.
The 11th? You want to do the 11th?
I don't think we're doing anything. I'm pretty good, man. Yeah,
Okay.
should be good.
I'll do the calendar invite. If something changes, let me know, because that is 3 weeks in a row, and I don't want I don't want Dana to get mad at me.
She's sleeping.
Okay.
She goes to bed at like 9 o'clock, so it's just
Yeah.
all good.
All right.
But yeah, tonight was just the beta was on they did a beta from 2 o'clock till 9 o'clock today. So I was on off and on with my friends all day long. Just I had friends from the UK hop on, and so if you have a microphone set up, you can set up the chat so that once you friend me in the game, it's proximity based. So as you walk closer to people, their voices get louder and they can
Wow.
talk to you. And then when they walk away, they go off in the distance. It's really cool. I mean,
That's cool.
they have everybody I've turned on to the Fallout universe has just been amazed by it. It's crazy. The company's in Maryland, Bethesda, and it's just, I don't know. I've fallen in love with it. In fact, Danny and I are buying mid-century modern furniture like crazy now. That's what we're doing in our house because we just love the look of that, and it's that old, like they put it in the game, like in Fallout 4, that beginning.
Yeah.
You're going through the house and everything's
Right.
like pristine, perfect, and it's that look that this is the home of the future.
Yeah. Now, does she play?
Oh yeah, she was on all day with us today.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Very good.
Yep.
Well, for me, the first real game I played, other than Atari and that kind of stuff, but the first real PC game I played was, Wolfenstein. But then that gave me headaches because it was all 90-degree angles and everything. This is before the internet. I went on to this bulletin board, and there was this file called Doom EXE, and I downloaded it. It's like, oh my God, this thing is amazing. So I was a Doom, and then Quake after that, and then Half-Life.
There you go, man. You're right in the same.
Yeah.
Walter and I followed that same exact path. We played Duke Nukem, and we played, Wolfenstein and Quake 1, 2, 3. We were just he and I talk often because we played Quake 1 with a dial-up modem.
Yep.
That's and it had the the thing we loved in Quake 1 was the grappling hook. You'd be able to grapple onto things and fly around the levels, and then we played Unreal later on, and Half-Life, and
Yeah.
those games are. I mean, there's a certain crew of people who grew up in that
Yep.
heyday of those video games, and
Ooh. My buddy, my best friend who used to live in the same neighborhood as me, just like 8 houses down. When I got Doom, I called him up and said, "Dude, go on and download this." So we downloaded it, and then I think the first version wasn't this way, but later it was multiplayer. But we were on dial-up modem, so we couldn't talk, and it was before cell phones, so we couldn't talk.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Then our neighborhood got DSL, and we were the first two in the neighborhood to get DSL. And you know why we got DSL? So that we could play and be on the phone at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And nowadays, I mean, we have really sophisticated chat servers through Discord and whatnot. And actually, Discord's pretty cool because they have an overlay for the game now where if you're in a Discord server talking with somebody, a little light with their name comes on to tell you who's talking. So, I mean, it's pretty cool that you can, see, you might be able to not hear somebody or something or not know where they're at. But the audio in Fallout 4 is positional. So if someone's on that side of the forest and they're like, get over here and help me, you know right where they're at.
Yeah. You know, one of the things
comes out in your ear that way.
One of the things that's messing me up with Fallout 4, and this is because of my setup, is, if you've seen behind the scenes, you know that like right now I got 8 monitors going. 4 of them go off when the show's done, but I run with 4 all the time. Right. 2 monitors on 2 separate computers, and I use a program called Mouse Without Borders to move like they're all one computer. Yep. Well, I'll be moving in the game and accidentally move the mouse over to one of the other screens, and then boom, now the game goes, I'm out of the game.
So you're probably playing in borderless windowed mode, which makes it think that it's full screen, but it's not. And you just want to switch your game to full screen mode, and that'll trap your mouse within the screen. And if that still doesn't work, there's actually a program out there that will trap your mouse on the game screen. Because I was shooting a video for Hellblade, and Hellblade had a horrible problem with I'd be in combat in the game, and the mouse would move off the screen, and I'd click right out of the game. Yeah. And I would be filming it, so I was doing commentary and everything else. Yeah. And so I had to actually get a program that would trap my mouse on my game screen, or just end up shutting that monitor off. But now I just use the mouse trapping program. It just keeps it all on one screen. So but yeah, that can be a pain in the butt. But I think if you try full screen, that should fix your problem. Okay.
All right. Well, I'm going to stop the stream. Jan, Norman, Gary, anybody else who came out, Molly, who's over Molly Morgan over on Facebook.
Molly Morgan.
Yep, she's on Facebook, and Christina. And anybody else I missed who's still here. Good night, Nancy. Good night, guys. We'll see you next show.
Awesome.